Now, if you're looking and you're kind of sharp, you might notice that I'm about to run into a bunker here on Lyria, armed with a sniper rifle. What are you doing? That's the stupidest thing, the stupidest weapon you could possibly use. What's going on? Well, I wanted to make a video about taking the Cutlass Red to bunkers. I wanted to kind of show that off, and have some fun, have a fun episode. But in the end, I was left asking only one question.
How did it come to this?
So, what are we doing with this video? What was the point? What are you after, and how did you get stuck in that situation? The point of the video is I was going to kind of reinforce on some points that I was making in the last video. And this was going to be the continuation of that video. I was going to take a Cutlass Red. I was going to go do some bunker missions. Going to go have some pew-pew good times. Everything was going to be great. We were going to get some guns, fill up the gun rack, make some credits, and kind of show that, ground combat needs some tweaks. It needs some love. And what I didn't really perceive is just how many tweaks and just how much love it needs. This has been kind of an interesting and eye-opening experience. Ground combat in Star Citizen needs a whole lot of love. It really, really does, because this was just like... the intent of this video isn't to just beat on the game. I know, early access, blah, 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 all that shit. But really, some love and attention is needed in this area. Desperately. So I get down into this bunker. I'm fighting these enemies, and I have had one gun just vanish on me completely. Earlier, when I was coming through, these guys were shooting me down the hallway with perfect accuracy. I used up 4 medipens to get to this point, and now I'm realizing why I couldn't kill them. I can't melee them. It's just... Come on. Really? I know, early access, yada, yada, yada. And we've made some allowances because the game is in early access and the game has bugs for ships. And that is that when your ship gets blown up, whatever weapons you've installed on your ship keeps. I'm going to argue that with the current state of FPS play, which is interesting, which is fun, which is great. I don't hate Star Citizen, by the way. When you're playing FPS, the weapons that you buy, you should keep them as well. The same way it is with ships. In the future, yes, you should pay like an insurance plus to get those things back. Much like, it's weird how you get killed in your body armor, yet you respawn in your body armor. Kind of strange. That stuff is pretty valuable, so you'd think that would have been taken, but I don't know. I think that you should keep your weapons. I think that, much like when you buy a ship, like here I am out in space with the Cutlass Red. I've got attritions on my Cutlass Red. I'm actually thinking about changing that in the future, but I've got attritions. If my Cutlass Red gets blown up, I get my attritions back. All the guns that the Cutlass Red originally came with, it's not going to come back to me with those. If the ship gets blown up, it's going to come to me with the 4 attritions that I put on it. And I feel that with FPS gameplay being interesting, in an interesting place, that we should get our guns back as well there. Because without, some real work and some real polish and some real fixing, FPS combat is kind of a shit show right now. It really, really is. I don't want to play the time card, but, we're 7 years on, and this is kind of ridiculous. 7 years plus, actually. until we get, FPS combat polished and in a state that warrants, these added combat penalties, which, by the way, I'm in favor of, I am entirely in favor of these additional combat penalties, but I think that until we get to a point where all these things are working and meshing very well, that the idea that, you fell in combat, so whatever gun you were holding on you lose, is stupid. Like, if you're holding a gun on your back, you get to keep it, but the gun you were holding in your hands, you lose it. Doesn't make any sense at all when you think about it objectively. It's just ridiculous. And this is something that should be, kind of treated the same way it is on ships. Now, ship-to-ship combat in Star Citizen is, it has its issues. That's true. I mean, there are ships that have holes in their shields. There are, many little problems with Star Citizen's overall space combat. But we have made these tremendous allowances to kind of make up for those problems, right? Well, like we have said that, when your ship gets blown up, whatever weapons, whatever equipment you put on your ship, you get it back. FPS combat is kind of a shit show right now. And yet you pay an even higher penalty for a system that is far less reliable, when the easier system pays next to no penalty, right? It really doesn't make sense at this point. I mean, I can understand in a finished game, in a finished universe, it should not be that way. Like, for instance, let's say, that cop that I just shot down that gave me my 4 crime stat. In a finished, polished version of Star Citizen, personally, I don't think that I should have gotten the extra crime stat right away. What should have happened is that even with the ComSat satellites and all of that being on, it should have just recorded that there was an event over here on the moon Magda. Now, that recording of that event now gives me a timer. I have a certain amount of time to go to the wreck of that ship, wherever it crashes, salvage the black box, take the black box and either get someone with a herald or take it to some place where I can get the data manipulated or erased, and then I have to bring it back to the wreck and place it in the wreck before the authorities get there to investigate, to avoid gaining crime stat. I'm all for paying some tough penalties, but the game has to be in a state that justifies it, and the game currently isn't. Now, we do have to have criminal penalties in the game, certainly, to kind of corral or correct or cajole, however you want to say it, player behavior, to make people who are going to use the criminal system in Star Citizen to emphasize the point that it isn't just going to be a free-for-all. There are going to be penalties. There are going to be drawbacks to engaging in this behavior. And I am all for them. But the game has to be in a state that matches those penalties. And I think that this simple penalty of losing firearms when you get gunned down, when your ship can get blown up and you still get all your weapons back, doesn't make sense. In the future, it will, but in the current state of the game, it does not, and I don't think it does anything to enhance gameplay, especially considering the shit show that FPS combat is. I don't think that if space combat being in a far better state, albeit not perfect, but in a far better state, can justify this lighter penalty of, oh no, it's okay, you don't lose your weapons and your equipment, but somehow FPS combat, which is just garbuncle at the moment, yet we're forced to pay these extremely harsh penalties for engaging in it and just trying to enjoy it. It doesn't make any sense, and it's something that should be changed. When I made that video, in a weird way, we kind of come back to that video that I made last time when I said, here are some enhancements that you could do to the ground missions. Well, here's a major one. This is something that we need up until a stage where the game is in a state that can justify the harsher penalties. But the game just is nowhere near there. FPS combat in general in Star Citizen needs a lot of love. It really, really does. And I can see how that would conflict with some of the new features that they're hoping to bring in. And of course, CIG kind of wants to get everything on the table first and then go around and polish everything up and fix it. That's kind of the way that they're operating. Fine, cool, I understand it. But if I'm getting shot through a wall, I shouldn't be losing my weapons. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.